Hey there, my name is Jacob Peterson. I am a Bachelor of Arts student at the University of the Fraser Valley, and I have just recently been diagnosed with ADHD, just 3 months ago at 23 years of age. In this video, I'll talk about a variety of ways that educators can support those with ADHD as I take you along a journey to explore my personal experiences mixed with that. For me, what it feels like to have ADHD is just normal. Though I always wondered if I was different from other students, I'd always just thought that it was a unique personality quirk or something along those lines. After all, my mom, my dad, my sister, and some of my friends did things that felt similar to me throughout my life. Because of this, I thought my experience was the same as neurotypical people. However, as I went through my university studies, I started to meet more people with ADHD. Some of my friends started talking about them getting diagnosed with ADHD or other neurological conditions such as autism spectrum disorder. As posts, essays, articles, and videos of people talking about ADHD started to appear more and more in my feed, I started to realize, oh, some of these experiences are things I've definitely shared. After years of getting distracted, being scared to go to the doctor because of anxiety, and a lack of motivation, I finally decided to make the phone call to my doctor. After a couple meetings, conversations, and some small surveys, my doctor felt confident enough saying that I have ADHD. When I told friends, coworkers, and others I was diagnosed, I got a resounding, yeah, that adds up. Or even some, wait, you weren't diagnosed already? Though it was a moment of humor and feeling validated, it also led to some more introspection and reflection on my experiences. When I was talking to my dad about my grades that were published after the fall 2024 semester, he told me that he was proud and talked about my growth from my pre university studies. It was here that he made an off comment about him and my mom being worried about me because of my lack of organizational skills, difficulties keeping me focused, and other school related difficulties that I faced in the past that were likely due to ADHD. As I am somebody who wants to become an educator myself, this helped push me towards doing some further exploration of the issues that people with ADHD face in learning environments, and how we can help to address these and work with these issues to enhance the learning of not just people with ADHD, but all students in the classroom. When I went through elementary through to secondary school, my grades were always fine. Average around B grade levels, with maybe a few A grades in classes that I was particularly excited about due to their content. At times, though, they dropped low into the C levels for classes I found hard to engage with, such as math classes. However, it was confusing to both my parents and my teachers that my grades were not higher. I enjoyed and was very passionate about learning in school. I actively participated in many of my classes and learning environments. And even though there were times where I may have dozed off a couple times in math class, I was considered a good student in every other way. Yet, this status as a good student and as somebody who actively helped in the classroom environment, it didn't reflect often onto my own grades. It turned out, to my surprise, this was not just a me issue. This is an experience that many people with ADHD have had and which has been studied extensively. So, as we explore issues and difficulties that people with ADHD face in learning environments, let's quickly go back a little bit. Let's talk about exactly what ADHD is so we can have a solid knowledge base to build off of. So, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder, also known as ADHD, is one of the world's most prevalent neurodevelopmental disorders, with a worldwide prevalence rate of 7.2%, according to Boone's article. It is commonly observed as you says in her 2019 article, persistent pattern of inattention and or hyperactivity and impulsivity. Much misunderstanding surrounds neurodiversity and neurodiverse labels. If you bring up having some neurodiverse traits, it's not uncommon to hear people say, oh, everyone's a little ADHD, or oh, I have some OCD, or even everyone's a little bit on the spectrum. Comments like these, among other factors, affect public perceptions and public discourse of ADHD. Even if it's not intentional, seeing neurodiverse behaviors and traits as something that everyone experiences leads to more misinformation spreading and information being mixed up. Some people even instead reduce the experience of neurodiverse people to just behavioral problems, as Wood explores in their article. However, people with ADHD, amongst other neurodiverse conditions, have been shown not just to be different in behavior, but instead in actual neurological makeup. MRI and fMRI neuroimaging studies have shown that people with ADHD, quote, have distinct anatomical brain differences compared to the controls and important functional differences in mental processing, end quote, taken from the Boone article. So, Although many people have some experiences which may be shared with those who have ADHD or other neurodiverse people, people with ADHD have a brain which works differently than those who are considered neurotypical. Because of this, they have unique difficulties and experiences both in education and life as a whole. So now that we have the groundwork of what ADHD is in a literal and scientific sense, let's talk about how it's experienced more. As I mentioned, I'm someone who's lived with ADHD for all my life, but has only been officially recognized as having ADHD recently. Because of this, I went through most of my education, both pre and post secondary, as someone who's been classified as, quote, normal. Because of this, I had not reflected much on my experiences until recently, and have not actually received any special accommodation or privileges from them. Because of this, I have personally experienced many of the different things that are written about in academic journals that discuss ADHD and the experiences of ADHD havers in education. Exploring these journals helped me realize, as I mentioned, that my experiences weren't just me issues, but instead common issues experienced by people with ADHD as a whole. One such issue I've faced is difficulties reaching out to instructors and teachers for help. For the longest time, I just reduced it to anxiety. Though anxiety definitely plays a role, it's much deeper than that. This difficulty I've faced connects to many observed hurdles that people with ADHD navigate through. In her article, Linda Yu builds off the existing scholarship, which highlights the importance of high quality relationships between teachers and students, while also talking about the difficulties that might be faced by those with ADHD when it comes to developing these relationships. Yu highlights that these teacher student relationships affect how well students perform academically in class. Because students know where they stand in a community and how they are perceived both by their peers and their teachers, it can affect students socially as well. However, many students with various disabilities tend to have various difficulties with social connections, especially, as mentioned, with teachers. Some of the reasons why learners with ADHD can particularly have difficulties forming relationships with teachers is due to conduct problems in the classroom. These conduct problems are not intentional on the behalf of the learner with ADHD, but instead spring naturally from having ADHD. Here's what I mean from spring naturally from having ADHD. Commonly, people with ADHD tend to have difficulties focusing and sitting still for long periods of time, which can lead to them being intrusive in class or requiring extra focus and assistance from educators. Because learners with ADHD tend to therefore have worse student teacher relationships because of this, they tend to have some of their difficulties that they already face be exacerbated. Some such examples are their self efficacy, pro social behaviors, and relationships with peers, as highlighted by you. Because students with ADHD are more prone to developing negative relationships with their teachers, it's important for the teachers to be aware of the needs of their students and to work to sustain a positive relationship with these students. This includes working to understand their needs and disabilities, having patience with them, being mindful as a whole of their different needs and challenges. This means that it's important for teachers to be properly educated on ADHD and its challenges. In her article, Catherine Gibbs points out that the beliefs and understandings that many teachers have about ADHD are not necessarily accurate or comprehensive. This leads to a gap in their knowledge and them having erroneous beliefs about ADHD. Because of this, it's important that teachers have a correct and better rounded understanding of ADHD and proper management methods for students with ADHD, as Gibbs points out. This allows teachers to react more appropriately to situations where they may see a student with ADHD having conduct issues or other issues in the classroom. By developing a deeper understanding, knowledge, and better ways to manage situations, educators can help to foster better student teacher relationships. On top of difficulties forming positive teacher student relationships, students with ADHD may have other struggles that either both directly and indirectly affect their grades and performance in academic environments. One smaller and simple way that learners with ADHD may have their grades affected by their ADHD is through poor penmanship. In J. Roth et al.'s study, they found that children with ADHD often experience motor problems, and, in particular, graphomotor movements, including handwriting. I know that this is something that I definitely suffered from, and still suffer from. Back in high school, middle school, I often lost marks for poor penmanship and poor writing. Because some students with ADHD do experience these motor control issues and penmanship issues, it's important that teachers are either A, more understanding that students with ADHD may have worse penmanship, or B, allow students with ADHD or poor penmanship to use other resources and materials, such as computers, to complete assignments. This can be further aided by some smaller gestures as well to help for more accessibility. This can be as simple as sending the Word document version of a worksheet to a student. This way, they don't have to spend extra time transcribing information from the page to the computer. In addition to penmanship, another thing that can affect the grades of learners with ADHD is their own temporal perceptions. Many people with ADHD suffer from what is called time blindness. Time blindness is the experience where one may end up accidentally being oblivious to the passage of time. This means that it may just feel like a short period to one person's internal clock, but in reality, multiple hours or minutes have passed. The experience of time blindness, or difficulties with temporal perceptions, have been highlighted by Hurst in their article. Here, Hurst explores not just people with ADHD experiencing time differently than their peers, but also the difficulties that can arise from it. This includes many difficulties with planning and time management. Because students with ADHD are more prone to time blindness, they can have more difficulties in the classroom managing their time. For example, they could quickly glance over to a poster or something distracting to them in their view. Then, before they know it, 15 minutes has passed, and they're running out of time on their essay writing in class. This experience is not limited to people with ADHD, and many may experience it, especially when they enter the zone or flow states. Hurst highlights how teachers can help those who have temporal perception issues by limiting visual stimuli and by using temporal cues. When it comes to limiting visual stimuli, one can limit how many visual distractions they have in their classroom. And for temporal cues, it can be as easy as having a schedule or to-do list for the day's lesson. This can help people with ADHD and just people as a whole who may have difficulties with temporal perception issues in a class setting. Something else that can affect the grades of students with ADHD more directly than time blindness or penmanship is academic underachievement. I myself experienced this much before my time in university. Many students may understand the content well enough in a class and may even be active in the classroom. However, as students with ADHD may have more difficulties both focusing in general, but especially on content that does not engage them, they may find parts of school to be boring. McDougall and all explore this in their article, where they highlight that because students may find content in their classes boring, they may disengage with the work. Students disengaging with the work is a common issue in general. However, it's observed more often in people with ADHD, especially in young ages where they are more likely to be impulsive. Because of this, many students with ADHD may end up scoring consistently lower than their peers just because they have these difficulties engaging with what they're doing. To help not only students with ADHD with this problem, but just all students in classes, teachers can work to structure their classes to be more engaging for students. Gibbs highlights this in their article, where they give some examples of ways to structure the class and make it more engaging. One such way that Gibbs points out is introducing humor into the class. Even though teachers aren't expected to be full-on stand-up comedians or clowns, adding a little joke or two can help to keep class more interesting. I know, in my personal experience, hearing a professor talk about moles making Stonehenge in his backyard instantly got my attention when learning about 18th century philosophers. In addition, having a well-structured class that has interspersed breaks has also been shown to help students stay more engaged with their classes. Even the teacher having a more comprehensive and deeper knowledge about what they're teaching has shown to have students be more engaged with the class as they find it more interesting. These are just a few of the ways that teachers can help to keep their students engaged in class. Now, not all parts of ADHD will affect the student in these listed ways, though. Many students with ADHD may also suffer from other difficulties, such as poor mental health. This includes being more prone to anxiety and depression. While anxiety and depression as a whole are a huge topic to themselves, I'll keep my mentions of them brief here. Mental health, after all, could be its whole own video otherwise. As noted in a Drago and all's article, people with ADHD are at a higher risk to experience both anxiety and depression. Greater challenges can even be faced by people with ADHD and are undiagnosed, as highlighted in French and all's article. With this in mind, we can then look to McCurdy and all's article, where they highlight the impacts of poor mental health on learning. More specifically, they mention that anxiety and depression can leave students at higher risks of lower academic scores. These risks of lower scores only get exacerbated and more complicated when considering intersectional issues such as race and class. With everything in mind, ADHD might seem like an unconquerable challenge for students. When we combine the difficulties of forming strong teacher-student relationships, poor penmanship issues, time blindness, underachievement, and poor mental health together, on top of various other difficulties not covered in this video, it can seem like it's an impossible hurdle to overcome. However, this is not true. Although ADHD may pose as a challenge to many students who experience it, students with ADHD, like myself, can still succeed and go far with their educational journeys. Teachers can be a crucial part of allowing them and helping them to go far. By keeping in mind the various tips, such as organizing classes in an ADHD friendly way, incorporating humor, or even just the basics of having more patience and understanding of students with ADHD, teachers can help students out in their educational journeys. Though it's likely that we'll never get everything perfect in our classrooms, every little step helps and can help to create a better space for not just students with ADHD, but all learners in your classroom. Thank you very much for watching. If you want to learn more about ADHD and its effects on education, I recommend checking out some of the sources linked here in the coming reference list. Thank you very much and have a wonderful day.